Hello, Lauren. Welcome to Taking the Leap.
Hi there.
Hi. So it is Thursday and a Memorial Day week. So it's great to see you. And it looks like you're in Italy, but I know you're not, right?
It was. That's one of the prettiest views I know. It's in Panzano, which is the heart of Tuscany.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. All right. So let me introduce you and myself as well. I'm Caryn Saitz. I am the host of Taking the Leap, and I'm really excited to have my special guest here today, Lauren Hefferon, and she is the CEO and Chief Executive Biker, which I love that title, of Ciclismo Classico, correct?
Wow, excellent. Good,
All
good.
right, all right. So, you're going to get to share what that is. And actually, I've known Lauren for a lot of years, and we met because Lauren was a member of EO Entrepreneurs Organization in Boston many years ago, and that's how we actually met. So, and my brother and my sister-in-law are huge biking people, and their whole group of friends, and I know many of their friends have taken trips with you.
Oh,
And
great.
I personally, I love the trip aspect of it, but I'm not a biker. So
Not yet, not yet, not
not
yet,
yet.
not yet,
There's
not
always, I
yet,
have
not
a
yet.
bike. I have a bike.
I'm going to convince you. I'm going to convince you. Okay.
There you go. There you go. All right. So, um, well, I think you have to share. What do you do and what have you been doing? Because it's pretty amazing.
Oh, thank you. Well, I own Ciclismo Classico. I've been 30. It's our 34th year. I was one of the very first. I think I was one of the first women-owned bicycle tour companies in the world. Just sort of as a young person, I loved to bicycle. I always bicycled in high school and throughout my life. All of us kind of think about what we want to do when we grow up, and I always said, no matter what I do, it has to be involved with cycling. And so I did a lot of I did a lot of things within cycling. I worked for bike shops. I wrote bike articles. I took a lot of bike photography. And then I really started, in addition to the bicycling, I really realized that I love people too. I think if I wasn't a bicycle tour guide, I would be a teacher,
Uh-huh.
an elementary school teacher, because I like to have a lot of fun and I love the beginner mind. I love, sort of young at heartness. And so I put together bicycling, and then of course I love to travel. And then I went to Italy after college, and I had also been a tour guide, and I experienced tour guiding in high school and college. So when I was in Italy, the Italy thing, just like landscapes like this, just said, "That's it. I'm not going home." I'm Italian by my parents. My mother was Italian. My father was half Italian. And so I fell in love with Italy. It's definitely where a part of my soul lingers, calls me back. And so when I came home from Italy, it didn't take long after going to art school for a couple of years. I actually did my thesis project in art school on the brand, my Ciclismo brand.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah,
So
it was
did you have a name like right out of the gate? Did you
well,
know what you wanted to call it or?
it didn't take long. I think, I spent so much time in Tuscany, and that's where Chianti Classico is. And so every day I was bicycling, and the Chianti Classico logo was always in my face. So I said, well, Ciclismo Classico. And so it actually didn't take that much, although I would say that what I bring to Ciclismo has always been a creativity and sort of playfulness. And
Uh-huh.
so it didn't take me long to play the logo. And so I, off and running in 1989, I had a couple of trips. Actually, my very first trip was all women, 5 women. And then it, really
And
just,
how old were you when you really started it?
I was like 3 years out of college. So I guess it was like 1989. So I graduated in 1983. So it was actually more like, well, 88 is when I did the DBA, the Doing Business As. And I got a scholarship from the Small Business Administration for $5,000. So I started with very little, and in those days you really could. I'm not sure you can do the same now, but um,
Uh-huh.
and so yeah, I started when I guess it was 80. I was just like 20, 28, I guess, and young and stupid.
No.
No, you're not stupid,
Young and hopeful and
but
young
I
and,
think, well,
kind of open-minded, right?
and I always encourage young people, like, to definitely not be cautious about starting their own business, as long, because when you grow older, you have kids, you have family, you have houses, you have bills to pay. And I have to say, what I meant was, I mean, I had other than my time and my passion and my energy, I had nothing to lose, right? So I started out, and I knew from trip number one, like, that was it. I was off and running, and I still feel the same way. I mean, I love what I do. I love the people in the business, and I've been through just about everything. And that's one thing I always say as I move forward. I mean, I really would like to help other entrepreneurs, and particularly women, because I've had my share of entrepreneurial obstacles and opportunities. And
Right.
certainly as a woman, can share a lot. So I've kind of been through it all now with COVID.
Uh-huh.
But now it's sort of like I've been through it all, and I know there's more coming.
It's, and so what's a little different with our conversation today is some of the other conversations were women who had done something else, and then somewhere along the way they realized that they wanted to go after their dream. You out of the gate really went after your dream, and what's actually pretty unique about it is you're still doing it,
Yeah,
and you've grown with it, and it's grown with you. And has it changed over the years? I mean, your original vision may have been one thing, but is it still the same vision today?
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I mean, there's a lot of things that are different. We could talk about that, and a lot of things that concern
Uh-huh.
me and challenge me in ways that I didn't when I was younger, for sure. I mean, that's a very important discussion. But I have to say, I mean, I tell my kids, and I tell a lot of people, and I learned this probably along the way to all the business books that I read. I never went to business school, but I encourage people, particularly when I hire them, to think about what they love, what they're really good at, and where they add value to the world and themselves and their lives, right? So for me, when I ask that question, I love cycling. I'm really good at it. I really love it, and I always believe that it can bring value back to my family, it can bring value to the world, and it can bring value to others. So that's my purpose. And when I think about other things that sort of fall into that category, there are, and I can do that. Like I love being creative, and I love painting, and I love doing art.
Mm-hmm.
But the purpose that cycling and what I do fills is connectivity to people. I would say that my secret weapon, if I had one, it's sharing, and I love to share. And I think that, that's why art is great, but art is kind of like you share it in your studio and then you have to share it. But when you're on a bicycle, if you're to bicycle with me, even if it was a couple of miles, I bet I would get you to bike another 10. I love sharing my passion and what I do really well. And I love understanding people, and because I believe so much in that bicycling is kind of one of the
Mm-hmm.
healers of the world, environmentally and health wise and psychologically. For me, it's the one thing that brings my left and my right brain together, which sometimes have a challenge coming together. Um,
Uh-huh.
when I go off for a bike ride, everything is kind of gets together. My hyperactive left brain and my hyperactive right brain on a bicycle kind of come in balance. So I believe so much that when people try it, that they're going to love it. So that's why it really remains my purpose, because no matter
Uh-huh.
how I do it, whether it's my company or some other form, it'll always be my purpose.
So do you bike every day? I mean, do you go out riding every day?
Yeah, but I'm really not obsessed. Like I didn't ride yesterday. I'm not obsessed but I know that particularly when I'm challenged, I've lost people in my life. I've had super challenges in my life. Actually, in the most challenging moments is when I bicycle. And that's often, when we're challenged, we kind of take away the things we love, because we feel like we have to sacrifice them. I've really learned that that's not a good
You go
strategy.
the other way.
I think I have to. And a lot of people say, what are you doing biking? You have so much work to do. Or what are you doing this? And now like I'm more relaxed today. So I'm probably not going to bike. I do have some work to do, but so biking for me is really, it's like I said, it's about my body, which I've kept really healthy through cycling. It's about my lifestyle, but it really is about when I come back from a bike ride, and usually the last part of it,
Mm-hmm.
life kind of feels okay. It's the zone. It's my zone. It's like playing an instrument. You know what I mean? It's like someone that plays
Mm-hmm.
guitar. It just makes them feel good.
So how do you, so now it's a business. It's not a hobby. It's not, some people think of biking as a hobby, but for you, it's a business. So it takes it to yet another level.
Right.
And so how have you sort of transitioned, from as a business? Do you look at it differently as a business versus just, I mean, because I hear you, it almost sounds like it's still your hobby?
Well, and that's really interesting. I'll tell you an example why that doesn't work. Like if I talk to somebody and I'm going to hire them, it looks very sexy in the outside, but
Right.
no, it's very sexy in the outside, but behind the scene, it is a business. Like you really, I mean, the travel business, you can imagine Italy.
Uh-huh.
It's if anything tested my love of my business or my love of my purpose, it's this. Oh no, it's and actually you're correct. Like, what I love to do, what I would prefer to do is to probably be guiding trips and being with people. I mean, so for me, I really do miss it a lot. I miss, and I knew when I started thinking about the business when I was young and I was guiding a lot of trips, I said, someday I'm probably not going to be guiding as much. I'm going to have
Hmm.
kids, I'm going to have family, which is true. And I get really busy in my business. So, so I have to say, you're correct that sometimes I do think, gosh darn it, this business sometimes, prevents me from doing what I love, which is why I bike every day, which is why I also try to get on trips as much as possible. Which is why I really do have to hire the right people that, allow me a little bit more freedom to get back on the trip. That has always been a challenge. I have to say, like,
Uh-huh.
I really have to figure out ways to do what I love to do, literally with people live, with landscapes like that in the background, and not just on a Zoom call.
So how many trips a year does your company actually do?
We do about 700 people, 800 people. Well, last couple of years a little bit different, but
Right.
kind of full blown 50 to 60 trips a year.
Wow.
Which
And
is
all Italy or other
all
places?
of Europe, and we have some, we have domestic trips too. So that's not considered on the travel business, world huge. And I actually hope post COVID, some of my own reflections have been, actually I think rather than, pushing to grow big, I'm going to push to grow small. And I think small is beautiful. So I've been getting more in my head, like, how do
Hmm.
we make the business small? Because, what we do is so personal. I realize that scaling that up is really a challenge. It's really, particularly under COVID. So,
And is
so
it because of the guides, or is it because you feel like you lose touch with the actual trips themselves? Or, I
I,
mean,
I think it's
because,
a difficulty of the travel business, scaling up the travel business, and I'm in a familiar place with a lot of people that when you're small, you really, you're giving someone such a highly personal experience, and then the ability to scale that up, like Vern Harnish's great book, this, Scaling Up.
sure,
There's so many moving parts in the travel business, so many, like it's really incredible. Like one trip alone, imagine this, like one trip, one 10-day trip could have 1,000 transactions between, the number of people on the trip, the number of hotels on the trip, the bicycles you have to get, the food you have to get, and all of those things, all 1,000 transactions, have to be great. Like they have,
perfect.
you know what I mean? They have to
Right,
be perfect. They have to be perfect.
right,
So it's, and the last thing I ever want to get is someone that didn't have a good time, because if they don't have a good time, then I didn't really fulfill my purpose, which is to make sure that you have a good time, so you do it again and again.
right. And do you have a lot of repeat customers?
Yes, very much so. And my strategy next year is going to be to take a deep dive into my customer base, which is, really broad and deep. And, I'm actually not going after less new business and more repeat business and more referral business, because
Hmm.
they love Chiclismo. And, customer acquisition is the hardest thing on earth now. It's the hardest.
Right.
So it's so expensive. I mean, it's exhausting, and it's not I'm much more comfortable getting new business by, if after this phone call, you're going to go tell a friend, you know what I mean? Like that to
It's
me,
referral, it's word of mouth.
referral business is for my company works much, much better.
Someone had a great experience, they had a great time. I mean, it works for mine also. I mean, I create experiences for people. I do take them traveling, and anyone who's been on one of those experiences say, "Oh my God, you got to go do this," or whether it's a forum retreat or a company retreat or whatever the situation. My experiences are not biking. I would hire someone like you if they wanted to go biking. But there's still really cool experiences. And if someone hasn't have a good time, and so many times it's out of your control, the
Oh,
weather or the bus breaks or I once had somebody whose room was leaking because somebody fell asleep in a shower in a room above them.
wow.
And that wasn't my fault, but but we have a responsibility to that
Oh, yeah.
client to ensure that they are happy when they start and when they finish.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what, I think of the travel business, what separates, someone who's dedicated to the travel business is someone that just sort of like playing with it, is someone that just, they for some reason, they develop that responsibility to the person's experience. And, it's also about that, I think more and more businesses are becoming more and more niched all the time. And so my niche is very, very specific. It's very different than even what might look on the outside a similar competitor. I think my niche, it's just different. And I think the more you can embrace your niche, whatever business you're in, that's kind of the way of the world now, because there's just not a lot of general businesses anymore. A lot of businesses are just going more and more, appealing to very specific.
Right. So what is the profile of your customer?
Yeah, the very narrow niche, I would say. I like to call myself like the Ivy League of bicycle tourism. Why? Not because we have a Harvard emblem or anything, or Cornell, but it's because the people that come on our trip, number one, I think by nature, they're similar demographic, meaning, between 55 and 75 and certain for certain income level. But I think what sets us apart is that people come on our tours to learn. Like, first and foremost, our trips are very educational. And if someone were to come, well, I'll give you an example. If someone came on the trip and we said, okay, we're going to have at mile 10, we're going to have a cheese tasting. A fast biker that wants to get from point A to point B might exactly demographically look like who I would want, but that person has no interest in cheese making, right? So the kind of people that come on our trip are, they're athletes or affluent, they're passionate, and they're curious, meaning that they're not just going to put their head down and bike. And they're not just interested in having us hold their hands all day. They actually like an adventure. They like when something they might get a little off track. They're not expecting us to sweep them up, and pick them up. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying our customer is, customer after customer is sort of like, Ciclismo Classico is presenting me with almost like, I like to say our tours are almost like a course. Like, we have a trip called Bike Across Italy. It goes from one side of Italy to the other. And someone just emailed me, it's the best bike trip that they've taken ever. And it's because this person was the right person, and we're providing, it's almost like you're taking a bike, kind of a course about Italian history on a bicycle. And so a lot of people just aren't interested in that. They want they want 5-star hotels, they want super luxury, but we're saying, come with us, and by the end of this trip, you're going to have an understanding of Italy. And if that has to be important to somebody. If it's not, then that's not our customer.
So I think what I hear in that is setting their expectation.
Correct.
So that they really understand who you are as a brand, as a company, what other people have experienced in the past, and really and truly, what is their experience going to be? It's not just, getting up and you ride your 50 miles and then the bus picks you up and then you go off to the hotel and you kind of collapse or whatever it is, right? It's a different kind of an experience throughout the whole, and it builds and it flows which is great. I mean, for me, as someone who loves experiences, I think that's the best, But
I have to say, as much as I know my niche, I actually do hope, and although it's challenging, I do hope, this is sort of part of the bigger picture of my purpose and kind of what I want to educate people about, is that, I do hope, as an anthropology student and a traveler, that traveling, people start opening up their perspective a little bit, and be a little bit more willing for the travel experience to kind of relax with it, right? Because travel is not a transaction. Travel is not a commodity, right? And a lot of people, and I think even now more than ever, all of us, I think, rather than consuming travel, should think about what travel can give back to us, right? And that's sometimes I can teach. Sometimes it's possible to kind of, before I get someone on a tour, to open up their mind a little bit, but sometimes not. There's some red flags when I talk to people on the phone, and that they're asking too many of the wrong questions. They're asking,
right.
You know what I mean? But that's sort of what
they could be lost in the details for them. Right. I mean, which gives them a different kind of a perspective than someone who's like, oh, wow, I'm going to go to Italy and I don't know what I'm going to learn, but I know I'm going to have this unbelievable experience, and I'm going to see some art. I'm going to taste some food. I'm going to drink wine. And I also think it's about meeting great people that they're traveling with.
Absolutely.
And I think, finding that it's not easy to put a group together. I mean, I put masterminds together, and making sure that fit is pretty important to do they sync with one another? Do they have something in common? And how do you do that as you put these groups together? And how many people are in your average group?
Well, that's a great question. And that goes back to when I started, I have to say my very first training was called National Outdoor Leadership School, as well as Outward Bound. And, when you do these as a young person, it's like when you go to a camp. I mean, the camp counselors, the group dynamics is a
Huge.
You wouldn't use that word in a vacation. You probably use that word on a retreat. You
Right.
would use that word in a classroom, but you don't use that word on a vacation. We don't use it as part of our, that's an internal word. That's an internal
Right. Right.
concept. So I would say, I mean, one woman just called to sign up for a trip, and I said, the 4 other people on this trip, I'll tell you a little bit about them. I think it's a great group. I guess the setting the expectation is when I talk to people, I do talk on the phone about, the group and what the group dynamics are. It's a little bit hard because people aren't, like I said, when they're buying a vacation, they're not used to, when they're buying a vacation, asking about group dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, even our social media and our website will say, and I like to actually even talk about this more. We talk about who the guides are, but I like to talk about who your fellow travelers are, because I'm not only buying who the guides are, but I'm buying
Right.
who fellow travelers are, right? So that's something that travel companies don't do that much, but I think it's something to consider, because you're correct. I mean, you could have a lot of trips, and if there's one sour person on the trip, they can sour the trip, and it's tough. It really makes it, and sometimes that becomes,
Yeah.
so and so was kind of goofy or whatever, and that becomes something they talk about. But so on before the trip, it's a little tricky. On the trip itself, I think because we operate in Italy, Italians are really, we have a lot of Italian guides. Italians
Mm-hmm.
are really good at getting the group happy. You know what I mean? I think it's,
Yeah.
I think my guides are really good at, getting people, they get the group dynamics. Like, guides they'll set a good example,
Uh-huh.
fun lovingness. I mean, usually the strategy as a tour guide is, let's find let's sort of, and you probably know this as a group leader, let's see who the internal people are in this trip that I could kind of, you know what I mean? You're kind of spread,
Right.
you kind of have them drink a lot of the Kool-Aid. So they start, so internally the group it has
It
internal.
gels on its own.
Exactly. So I mean, personally, that's what I'm trying to do, is try to get the group gelling, and it works. I mean, so it works because we
Uh-huh.
succeed at it.
So I'm going to switch gears a little,
Okay,
because
sure.
taking the leap is about women who have actually transitioned and now have built their dream business. You
Right.
actually started your business a little earlier, but at the same time, it has transitioned over time. And now I would imagine that, you're a little bit older and you have a different perspective, what you would have done or what you could do even as you move forward. So what do you think about, for the next 5 years? First of all, do you want to keep doing your business for the next 5 years at
Mhm.
this point in your life? Is there something else that you want to start? Or how do you see your age factoring into what you would do differently, and the kinds of things and the kind of people that you might want to serve because of that?
Okay. So for question number one is, yeah, I guess, yeah, after COVID, we all, particularly the travel business, we work very, very hard. So I have to say, like, it definitely sort of took its toll on my energy level, which is sort of one of, one of my secret weapons, is in addition to sharing, but I have a lot of energy and I'm healthy. But I'd say I'm a little less tolerant in the difficult. That's why I want to go back. I'm trying to embrace my niche more. That's why I don't want to have the volume. I'm a little less tolerant toward the difficult client that's going to just like, we've really served people in the travel business the last couple of years. Anybody in the travel business can attest to that. So we really paid our
So
dues.
did you keep the trips going throughout COVID?
Well, I started New England tours. I started tours in New England, and they went really well. And the Northeast. So I really like that. I mean, that's another direction. I love what I do. I guess I don't have a partner. I would say to all the women out there that are starting businesses, I feel like I should have had a partner. I feel like I'm a COO for sure. I really probably could have been, I really needed a COO, because I'm a good CEO, meaning, the vision, the sales, the marketing, the packaging of it. But I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
operational part I get, but like, that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. I'm Marketing doesn't keep me up. I'm good at it. What keeps me up is
Mm-hmm.
are things in the background going to go okay? And not having a COO, that having that would have, like, I would have said, if I'm going to recommend it to anybody, I think having a partner, although having the wrong partner is probably tricky too. But
Right.
if you have a big, busy, complicated business, going at it alone is a long, long road. So I have to say I'm definitely getting tired of like being
So
the,
do you have one now, or would you hire one now?
I would, anybody out there, I definitely would definitely hire,
Uh-huh.
and I would definitely be interested in talking with folks, because for sure, I think that I've really set a great foundation of a great company. And I think having, like I said, having a right-hand person, just knowing that someone is not equally invested as I, because this is sort of my child of 34 years, but I
Right.
would say having someone that, because it's, is invested, like invested, not just for as a job, but invested. And that's, having gone through employees that are just not invested in that level, they go on, they have their lives. That's tough, and I get really attached to people. So losing people and employees is tough. So
Mm-hmm.
that, moving forward in the next 5 years, I would definitely like to, uh, I don't want to have these, I work hard, I'll always work hard, but I'd like to have more, a little more peace of mind, a little more peace of mind. And then what else you said was the second part of your question?
Well, it was more along the lines of, you're a woman CEO. Does it change your vision in terms of the types of people? I mean, would you like to serve women-only groups? Would you like to, I'm just wondering, I know you said at the beginning that that was really important to you, and one of your first groups was a, women-only group. So I was
Well,
wondering, your
I
customer base, I'm sure it's a lot of couples or singles, or because I don't think you do families. Am I correct? You
oh,
don't
we
do,
have done family too. And I guess the answer to
you
your
do
question,
kids? I mean,
well, we have done family tours, yeah. But I really like I like the question about the women, because I have to say, um, my fondest memories of we used to call ourselves, our byline was transforming lives through active travel. And I think that our company has transformed more women's lives. Now, I don't know, maybe men too, but maybe women are more likely to admit it and share that with you. Of course they are. But I'll never forget, for example, 1989, her name was Cecilia Gargano, and she was married to this super athlete, Frank, and actually they became godparents of my child. And,
mm-hmm,
but she'd never been on a bike, barely. And, but you know what? This woman she was going to go on a trip with her husband. They didn't have e-bikes back then. And she went God bless her. She went on a trip with her husband, but she didn't even know how to dismount from a bicycle.
mm-hmm.
So I literally taught her how to ride a bike. And that woman went on 5 bicycle trips, and this is someone that would have never ridden a bicycle. So I have to say, I really do like helping women, because I think bicycling is really empowering. I think it's a wonderful activity that women bring something else to bicycling that high testosterone men do not. And I think women are bringing this, like I myself, I bring this sensual aspect of cycling, and I think women, when I'm on a trip with women,
Mm-hmm.
they're more likely to take photographs. They're more likely to be interested in the food. They're more likely to so I think what we do is probably serves a woman traveler better than a man. Now, all guys out there don't get upset with me, but
Right.
I think that's, and I do enjoy it. Like when a woman gets excited about bicycling, it's almost like I've handed her a ticket to ride. You know what I mean? It's like she's free. Like I've given her sort of freedom.
It's really interesting because my sister-in-law loves to ride, and she has a whole group of women and they ride, and she also rides with a lot of men, but that is her thing, and she loves every minute of it, so it's definitely different. The As a woman entrepreneur, um I guess, what lessons do you wish that you could share with other women entrepreneurs who want to jump in? Now, I'm suggesting that they're jumping in a little bit older. They're jumping in when they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s, right? As an entrepreneur, though, what are the challenges that you may have faced that, you'd love to say to another woman, think about this. So it'll make your life easier if you think about
Absolutely.
this.
That's going to be my TED talk someday. Well, number one, I guess, like I said,
Don't wait. I would say don't do
oh,
that TED
okay.
talk right
Yeah,
now.
I'd like to, but I have a lot to share, and I welcome anybody to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to anybody one-on-one as well. Like I said, the partner thing. Now, it depends on the size of your business. If you're planning to launch a big, complicated business, I would say the partner is a good idea. I'd say I definitely go for it, because someone said to me, you might as well if you're going to work hard, you might as well work at something that's hard, that's yours. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And I agree with that statement. Like I work hard. My business isn't glamorous in the back end, but I work hard at it because it's mine, right? So, and I work hard at it because
Mhm.
I have a lot of pride in it. So I definitely would say go for it. Like, go for it. I would say, figure out, manage your weaknesses, but don't focus on them. Focus on your strengths. Find out what your purpose is. Like I just told you, why I want to do what I do. If you're going to do something, do you think about the crosshairs that I just said, what you love to do, what you're really good at, and where you add value, and think about where you add value, not just only to you, but to all the stakeholders, the environment, the planet, blah, blah, blah. I think that's important. Sustainable and
For
social,
sure.
I think it's important. I think, I should have taken a class in finance, a real serious class in finance. I should have learned how to do Excel spreadsheets. I should have learned a lot of stuff that I delegate, don't abdicate. I've abdicated every time.
Well, should have. I mean, I'm guessing that you have learned along the way.
No, like I said, I should have really taken, like all my, finance. I should have taken a serious finance class. Just really, because I had a little fear of numbers. Little fear of numbers was going on. So whatever. So it's fine not to want to do things, but be attentive to the things you're afraid to do. Because like I said, I was probably a little afraid of numbers, some kind of, whatever prejudice I had, or my math teacher in the 8th grade gave to me. But, I had a little bit of an insecurity about math, about that part of my business. And I abdicated versus delegated. And I think, the difference between those two things are very important. You delegate what you know how to do, and when it's done right. You abdicate something that you don't want to do, and you don't even know if it's done right. And I have to say, I would say, be cautious of that. Let's see hiring is a tricky one. I would hire people I would hire someone that has done what you want them to do. And too often I've hired people that look on paper like they could do what I want them to do. And I like people a lot. So as for someone that hires, I fall into the trap of, I like them. They're passionate. We get along really well, but on paper, they haven't done precisely what I want them to do. And I think that's important.
That's interesting, because Google hires not for someone who's necessarily done the task or the job, but they hire because they believe that the person has the passion to do it and they're interesting, and then they teach them. I'm hearing you say the opposite.
Well, because the thing is what you're saying, but yes, you can, but sure, Google probably has a training program, right? Like,
right. You've got to drop them into the fire right away.
And so, I'll be very transparent. If I'm going to hire somebody to do this job, I have to see on paper, have they called people? Have they talked to people? Because I'm not going to, exactly. So sure, like I know Apple is a great place to work. Go and work for Apple. They put you through this amazing 6-week sales training program. Then I'll hire them, because they've been through a good training program. But the hiring is tricky. And, it's a tricky part.
And what about the fact that you're doing business in other parts of the world? Global is great today, but does that complicate? You're paying people in different countries. There's language as a barrier in different countries. And also I think the expectations of people, just what they take for granted is different in each country. How have you sort of overcome those challenges?
Well, to answer your first question, sure, if you're going to do that's a whole other chapter of the book. If you're going to do work in another country, make sure you know everything about the other country in terms of doing business there. And things change all the time. That's another place. Do not abdicate that. And I would say in terms of, how do you
ever know though? Do you feel like you have to go there? Like you really have to understand the sort of the expectations and what people take for granted, because I do believe it's different by country. What's acceptable in one country is not necessarily acceptable in another.
I was talking more about the legal aspect of if you're going to
besides, right, legally, that's
accounting and legal. Make sure everything's all set there. But because we're offering up Italy, and our responsibility as guides is to teach people about the country. So as an anthropologist, sort of like that's what I studied. That's sort of what we do really well. Like when you come to Italy, we want people to appreciate Italian culture. And yes, we have to, we also, as the kind of connector between North American and Italy and Europe, we also have to be the ambassadors, right? So when we're operating in another country, you absolutely are an ambassador of the North America, and we're also kind of ambassadors of Italy at the same time.
Yeah, but I know from experience that sometimes, what somebody as an employee or, thinks is acceptable, in terms of their behavior is very different by country. So what might some expectation of somebody from the US might have something very different, in terms of an expectation of what that person may deliver. I mean, do you spend time training them in terms of, how to deal with the people and customer service from that perspective?
Well,
Because it does vary by country.
we hire Italians, right? So we hire, we're working, we're hiring people in Europe, right? So again, I think that, and I've had American guides, and we go through, we do a selection process when we hire our guides, because remember, the people that are doing our trips are our tour guides, right? So we go through a selection process, and we're really looking for people that have worked in the service business. We're looking for people that have been teaching, have worked in hotel, have worked. So the
In
first,
hospitality or
yeah, hospitality is really where we're looking for people, or teaching. Like, teachers are great.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Teachers and professors are super tour guides. And then, at the first guide meeting, we're looking to see how they interact with their other guides. Like, are they open? Are they fun? So you're looking for how they're interacting with other people. And then, usually within the first couple of trips, they're either going to make it or break it, right? So, because if they're not nice to people, and, if they're racing it, if they're kind of getting on the road and racing with customers, like, they're just not going to last. So, I mean, our average tenure of our tour guides is about 15 years. So
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah, we've had some guides 20, 22 years.
So clearly they're in sync with what your expectations are, and it works on both sides.
Oh yeah, and our tour guides love our company. That's just so heartwarming. I mean, it just makes me happy, because I go over to guide meetings, and they're just,
Hmm.
they love Ciclismo as much as I do, because they've been with us so long, and they're doing the stuff they're doing tough stuff as tour guides. They're solving the problems. They're on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. I
They're the
mean,
soul.
you're putting your clients in their hands
Yeah.
at the end of the day, because you're not going on every trip and you can't. So you have to trust them, and you have to know that they have a good sense that if there's an issue, that they bring you in or they bring whomever in to
Yeah.
help solve the issues before they become a disaster for everybody, right?
That's another good point you said about, what do I want to share with women? I think trust is also a good topic. Trust is, it's a balancing. I know it's like it's trust, and it can't turn into micromanaging, but it's like that real balance. Like, you're right. I'm trusting, literally. I'm trusting, and people are riding a bicycle down zigzagging roads.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of waivers involved in all
Oh
of that,
my
right?
God, and there's a lot of trust all the time, but on the other hand, you have to know when to say, like, you have to be the bad guy, that's
This
not
is
like,
dangerous. You can't do this.
right. Or even in your working environment, like, you just have to say, I can't trust. I mean, we have to kind of, that's not, trust isn't a difficult thing. If you're going to start a business, you have to trust, because you're going to have to trust a lot of people. You're going to have to be partners psychologically with a lot of people. So if you're going to start your own business, you're going to have to let out the control. You got to let out the control, because you're not going to be able to control a lot of things. So you have to control what's important.
That's great. I mean, I think that's great for anyone who's thinking about starting. Like, you can't do it all. You can't be everywhere, and you have to be willing to trust the people that you've hired to work for you. And when they don't work out, you have to be willing to say thank you very much, you know. But
Well, the E-Myth is the best book, right? It's like a little tiny book. Like, I don't know if you read it, but
mhm.
myth, I mean, the first thing it says is you start a business and you're everything, your CEO, your COO. And I guess if you're going to start a business, what I did really well when I started was I was really into documenting everything. And for example, the tour manual I wrote in 1992, which is only 4 years into my business, it was a 45-page document. I mean, I literally documented everything. And I did it because it was fun. I enjoyed it. But I also knew that I was going to have to teach other people. I always went into this knowing I'm going to have to teach other people what I do. So if you go into your business and if you want to be a sole entrepreneur, I almost go for it, because actually that's the best if
Right.
you're, sole proprietor. But if you're not going to be a sole proprietor and you're thinking about expanding, think about everything you do that you're going to have to teach somebody else how to do it. And
And that's not easy because you take it
no.
for granted. I mean, a lot of, I mean, that's kind of what you're good at. You take for granted, and other people are like, whoa, whoa, how did you do that? Right.
Well, you
So,
start realizing what you really do. I've realized like what I do really well. It's really hard to teach. Is for it's and it's the simplest thing. But for our brochure, I select the photographs. I really have such an understanding of every story that I want a photograph to tell. And no
mhm,
matter how often I've delegated that to other, to designers and good intentions on their part, I'm just really good at that. So you got to start saying, okay, if this is so hard to teach, it's either impossible to teach. And that's because I'm really the one that has to do it. Or, okay, I get the steps of this. I get how to teach the sales process. I get how to teach,
mhm.
part of the marketing process, and so, you learn those things. You learn, I think the easier it is to teach tells you that's probably what you don't want to do anymore.
Yeah.
If that makes
So it's not really the post-COVID world yet. As
no.
it just keeps rearing its head. I think, what do you see as the biggest challenge or your biggest challenge going forward?
I think it is the uncertainty of the world. I do think that it's maintaining hope and faith and positivity and mental stability and having conversations like this and it is hard. It's really hard. I have kids. I mean, people are shutting down and people are getting nervous, and we're operating with a whole other kind of customer base. I think that we have to be respectful to I think we as business people have to think of all the stakeholders, which includes, the environment. And I think we have to think about them even more than ever. So for me, that's, it's, I'm my, I didn't worry about, not worry, but those things didn't enter my mind as much. And now they do because they should. Right. So I think
Mhm,
that the uncertainty is tough. That's a tough one because the travel business, I still feel like, it's I never imagined. I always thought, we were in a vulnerable business, and I thought terrorism or whatever is we're vulnerable, but who never would have imagined this. Now it's kind of like, okay, you know um we just should be we I think that we should be doing good. Our business, I believe that businesses have to do good in the world. So no, if you're an entrepreneur, I hope whatever that you do, you're making the world a better place. I think if you do that, then you're doing all the best you can. If I'm just, if I bring less people on a bicycle, but every single one of those people just, is smiling and happy, and more joyful, then the world is so full of terrible
then
things.
you feel you've done well.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the concern is like I want to keep doing it, and I hope that I can, that I want to make sure that I can keep doing that. But the concern is that the cynicism and the uncertainty and that's oozing its way into our world, will make people shy away from these kind of opportunities. But I do think entrepreneurs, as I don't know, you remember Vern Harnish? I mean, Vern Harnish used to say, entrepreneurs will save the world, and I do believe that. I believe that entrepreneurs do
Right.
make the world a better place. But that's
I,
our
I,
responsibility. That's our responsibility.
I think that's a great place to end. And Lauren, you've been doing a great job with that. And I hope you inspire other women to have the confidence and the courage and the knowledge to go out there and try, and take that leap. I mean, go for it. It might not all work out, and it certainly isn't going to work out all at once. I mean, you've been doing this for 30 years, which is a great example, and you've had to pivot recently and you've had to change, but you still want to keep doing it and you still want to make it better. And I think that's an amazing place to be at, and to still love what you do the way you love it. I mean, and you wake up every morning happy about doing it. I mean, it doesn't get better than that because you get to make other people happy. So I think that's fantastic.
Well, thank
So
you. I do. I mean, you can share my email with the audience.
absolutely, I will.
If people want to just shoot me an email and maybe have a few questions, I'd be happy to try to answer their questions on email. And again, I think it is my responsibility to help young women or any women at any age, be more successful and not be at all ready to take the leap or the pedal stroke.
Yeah, or or we're waiting for that TED Talk, right?
Exactly, exactly.
All
Well,
right.
great.
Well,
Well, thank you
I
so much.
thank you so much. This will be, we're going to post this on LinkedIn. You will see a link on Facebook and on YouTube as well. So thanks for being here today.
Yeah.
Have a great day, and thanks for everything. And we're going to just
So
stop recording.